Hello, hello, and welcome to Hygiene Elevated Conversations and Innovations. Today we are joined by Kristen. And Kristen, you are probably our most international interview yet. So tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're doing and your background and let's focus on, I guess, your journey in dental hygiene and what has led you to where you're at right now.
Oh gosh. So I was doing the math real quick because I figured I was going to have to say this. I've been a hygienist for 29 years,
Wow.
right? So
Congrats.
clinical hygiene for 29 years. I have grew up in this, obviously in the States, but I've practiced in Oklahoma. I've had a license in Texas and practiced, license in Virginia and practiced. We've lived in El Salvador and practiced. Loved it
Wow.
there too. Yeah. Back in the States, so back with the Oklahoma license again. And then now I'm currently in Bangkok, Thailand, where I am not doing clinical hygiene right
Okay.
now. Yeah, I have to, there's some permissions that I have to get to do that in this country. And I have just been having so much fun that I haven't really gotten around to it.
That sounds like a
There's
great problem to have.
I know, what a problem. Gosh, I'm in Thailand having too much fun.
Right.
Okay. So, gosh, there's so many ways I want to go with this podcast. I want to know everything all at once. Okay. You have got to travel all over the world and practice. Um, but you kind of have one specific passion. You're a biological dental hygienist, correct? With
Yes.
IAOMT.
I am.
Um, what kind of put you on that journey? Let's start there.
So it was actually the last practice that I got to work with. When I was just interviewing for the job, the dentist asked me, she said, kind of like feeling me out, like how open-minded are you? Like what if you learn some things maybe a little bit differently? I'm trying to remember how she worded it, but it was kind of like, what if you learn maybe some of the things you were taught X amount of years ago weren't the best necessarily anymore? And I was like, well, I mean, you'd have to show me the science, right? Because I feel like I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to stop learning. So I was like, yeah, as long as there's real science to it. I mean, I'm open-minded. Things change, right? Like we don't still, start a fire with sticks anymore, that kind of deal. Like we've evolved. So, and she was transitioning her practice that way as well. And it was a beautiful fit with kind of what had gone on in my life too.
Okay.
As far as if you ask a lot of biological practitioners why they are biological, they've oftentimes had their own health issues and
Mm.
kind of maybe allopathic medicine hasn't been the best fit for them. So they've had to seek out some other answers in some ways to get
I
control.
That is 100% true. Yes. I hadn't
Hmm.
thought about that before, but yeah, I think that's 100% accurate on why that happens that way.
It's really interesting. And it's nice once you get in, then you start, you learn more and more and you meet more and more people and you learn more and more. And it's been wonderful for me. I love it. And
So,
you,
um, so this was in Oklahoma, correct?
yes.
Okay. For those who don't know, can you kind of describe what is a biological dental hygienist?
So I did my certification through IAOMT, International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. I'm going to just kind of go the broad umbrella of
Yeah.
what is biological dentistry, maybe, if that's okay. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
dentistry. It's not a specialty per se. It's more of a philosophy. So all these dentists have gone to dental school. They're dentists, they're hygienists, but it aims to, treat the patient as a whole, treat the patient in the safest, least toxic manner, and still, meet all these goals of new modern dentistry. So, yeah.
It's like functional medicine for dentistry. Like you're the whole person, not
Ex-
just this little hole that's in our face right here.
right? It's knowing that every single thing that you put in the mouth can affect the rest of the body. Everything that's going on in the rest of the body can affect the mouth.
Yeah.
I feel like other names you've probably heard would be like biological dentistry, functional dentistry, integrative dentistry, maybe even holistic dentistry. Like all of those are kind of getting close, kind of very similar.
So, so you started working at this practice in Oklahoma. What was your steps, I guess, before you got your own certification after working at this place?
So I was working there, for years. My boss had her certification through IAOMT. And it's funny, we talked. We were like, man, I wish they had something for hygiene. And they just didn't at that time. So it was like, that'd be great. Go to the meetings, doing all the things, implementing it in the office. And she's amazing. She was a real, I need everybody to kind of be, I don't know, not independent, but it's yours. You run with it. I support you. We all work as this great team and respect each other and our individual duties. So she's actually the one, she was like, hey, have you ever thought about a microscope? And I was like, what? Yeah, she did. I was like, no, what do you mean? And she told me about it. And I was like, 100% yes. Down for that. And then, so it was, yeah, let's go get the training, get the scope. But we were also doing things, we implemented ozone in the practice. So a lot of things were happening at once, I should say.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so I am 63% of the way through getting my certification through IAOMT. So I'm excited. I haven't gotten to the ozone portion yet. So I'm very excited for that one.
Be ready for your brain to explode. It's so awesome.
I am ready for it. Okay. Go ahead.
Can I ask you some questions?
Yes, ask her questions.
Sure.
Okay, so what was your experience? How did you even find out about IAOMT? What got you going?
So Joffrey and I went to RDH under one roof last year, and we did evolution, which is kind of like a not personal growth and development, but how to go to the next level in your hygiene career. And they had us kind of go around and talk about things that you were a little bit more interested in, like maybe like your niche. And I was kind of already like, oh, I want to do a homestead. I want to, start doing things more holistically. And I didn't necessarily have like a health scare per se. But some of the other hygienists in the room came up afterwards or during our whole introduction had said, oh, I just got my certification through IAOMT. And I'm doing this, this, and this. And I was like, yes, I want to talk to her and know more about this. And they had a booth at Under One Roof as well. And so I joined AOSH at the beginning of the year, which has been pretty good, but I am horrible about actually attending all the things that I sign up for. So I was like, I need something more. I'm not getting enough out of this, and nothing against AOSH. Like, that is on me for not being very good at it. And so I'm really liking IAOMT. Plus, the conference is going to be in Salt Lake next year, so I'll actually get to attend. So,
Nice.
yes.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Isn't Barbara Tritt speaking at Under One Roof coming up soon?
I think she is.
Yeah. I wish I was. She's going to be speaking on ozone, I know, amongst some other things. So if you're going, get a front row seat to that.
Okay. Poor Joffrey is like, this is like, we're nerding out right now. And Joffrey's like, what is going on, guys?
No, I love it.
Okay. So I am going to give you the floor, Kristen, and I want you to just tell us everything about the microscope. Like, that's your passion and your baby. And I would love to practice with the microscope. So tell me everything.
So it is a total game changer. 100%. As soon as we got the microscope, I compare it to an intraoral camera.
I love
I mean, right? Like, except it's for biofilm. So would you practice without an intraoral camera? Like it's right. Like it does all the heavy lifting. There's no more kind of selling. I feel like a lot of hygienists feel like they have to sell periodontal treatment, active periodontal treatment. So you show them a live video. You just take this little sample of plaque, you put it on a slide, put it under the microscope. In a perfect world, it's on a screen, any kind of monitor. It can be half the size of your wall. It can be tiny, whatever works for your practice. And you just basically give the patient a tour of their biofilm. So they see live what's swimming around in there. And it's that whole, seeing is believing kind of deal. Picture's worth 1,000 words. And you just rate it. Is this, hey, is this a low risk for oral disease and systemic disease biofilm? So I always like to make sure the patients know that, right? We always go with what's here doesn't stay here. It goes elsewhere and it travels. So we need to make sure that the mouth is healthy in order to not be ground zero for infection elsewhere in the body. So we look at the biofilm and we go, hey, is it healthy and protective biofilm? And if it is, we're like, hey, good job. Keep on doing what you're doing, right? And you can still talk about tweaks. Or is it moderate risk for oral disease, systemic disease? If it is, we talk about, we can kind of go into that, but we talk about what are you using? What are you eating? How are you sleeping? All the things. And then is it high risk? And you're pointing out pathogens, your things like that, kind of telling them what a high risk is. And then if it is, I always, tell people, even before we look at a slide, if it is high risk, do not panic. We can totally transform a high risk biofilm back to a healthy and protective biofilm. We just need to know what's there, right? So you have to know what's there. So it gives us, the microscope gives us the ability to see an at-risk situation, hopefully before any clinical signs of disease are present. So we see that it's high risk. Hey, let's change it, get it healthy. And then we don't have, gum disease. We don't have cavities, things like that. We get everything in a really nice homeostatic kind of situation.
So,
Patients love it.
Sorry. So are you guys doing salivary testing in conjunction with this at all?
So again, right now I'm not clinical, so
Well,
I'm just teaching microscope right now. When we did it, we did do salivary testing, and then we kind of switched over to the microscope a little bit more for a lot of reasons. It's great to do them together though. If you have a high risk, okay, let's see exactly what's living in there, because on the microscope, you're going to see families. You're not going to see a species. So if you want to know, is it TF or, particularly whatever, I said TF, I said TD, you're going to have to send that off for a DNA test. But you can see with the microscope, like I said, just kind of the families of different bacterias. What else are you going to see that's really fun? You can see parasites, which is really fun to see, and you don't really get that on the testing. You can see white blood cells, which is a really good indicator too, as far as, hey, is there an inflammatory process going on?
how much training do you need? Because it has clearly been quite a while since I've looked under a microscope and seen all these things that we learned about in school. So how much like reintroduction do you need, and kind of how much education are you giving patients? Like, this is what I'm seeing, this is how bad it is, that kind of a thing.
I tell people it is not rocket science. Like, we're all hygienists. We all went to hygiene school. You can do it. You don't have to have your PhD in microbiology. No, you can do it. You can do it in, a weekend. It's not, now you're gonna hone your skills, right? It's gonna maybe take a little bit more time to get really comfortable. But no, to get the information, it's not that long. Like, just go and do it. I feel like I always want to tell people, don't overthink it. Just go do it. Patients love it so much and they lean into it so much, that, I'm like, don't, just go implement it and start it. And you're gonna, how do I say this? They lean into it so much, and then you lean into it, and you have these really great conversations, and you just kind of keep learning.
That's I love a visual, and I'm with you. I would never practice without an intraoral camera. And kind of our latest tool, I guess, is we have AI in our practice now that really, it's nice when you're looking at x-rays and you can show a patient like, that's the calculus chunk, that little box, the AI is pointing it out to you. And so it's super helpful. So I could only imagine how amazing getting to see like a fresh swab of or of plaque is on a microscope plastered up on my big screen TV. Oh, I would love that so much.
They love it. I always feel like the very first thing they'll say is, "Oh, that's in my mouth, like moving around in my mouth." And then we're like, "Yeah, we're all looking at it, yeah." And then the second thing is, if it's high risk, they're like, "How do I get rid of it?" Okay, and then that's your intro to how your practice addresses active periodontal disease. So they're kind of ready to go. Our hygiene schedule just picked up so fast. Like it just kind of exploded, in a good way, not in a bad way, in a good way. We went from, sometimes having some spotty, cancellations are going to happen, to having this really nice, robust short list, call list. So there really wasn't a lot of free time. And then all of a sudden, you're booked out a really long time now. And then it gets to be, now how are we going to get everybody in? You just get busy. It's in a nice way. No more of those Tuesday morning at 10 cancellations that you can't get filled because nobody wants to come in at that time.
Yeah, that sounds like real growth for the practice. I mean, those are schedule problems that are good.
Right. And so you have that type of growth because you have patients. Now you have motivated patients that are ready to get on your schedule, which we all know those are who you want to be working with. Somebody that wants to get better and is interested in their health. But it also, you have this kind of other exponential growth because then you get, well, for one, patients are going to heal. You're going to do all these things, right? We're going to get this biofilm healthy. They're going to go, oh, I don't have bleeding anymore. I don't. And then you're testing this biofilm every time they come in. That's the other deal. Biofilms change. We all know really they can change quickly for the better, for the worse. So you need something, that's easy, immediate, inexpensive to test every time they're in. And that's what the microscope is. So they test it and they're like, oh yeah, that looks better. Great. I've been doing X, Y, and Z, or, oh, that didn't really, maybe not. What else could I do? And you tweak some more things. So they're invested, but they heal, they're happy. And then they tell everybody else, they're telling their friends, hey, do you know what they did in my office? Because it's not super common. I don't think a lot of people really use the microscope. So you do stand out as a practice that uses the microscope as a little bit different. And they're telling their friends and they're like, oh, I want to go in. Like, okay, I want to go in and get mine tested. So then you've got new referrals coming in as well. And then if you want to like really next level it, this is where some of the biological stuff comes in. When you start working with other healthcare practitioners besides dental, when you have, high risk biofilms and you're saying, okay, we're going to get the mouth healthy, but we also know this can affect other parts of the body. Is there, you refer back to their functional medicine doc or their naturopathic doc or whoever they see and go, how can you help support them in further healing or, they're at risk for this.
Total patient health, like mouth to toes. Yes.
Like it really, so that's the other deal with the microscope. It kind of, dare I say it, like forces the oral systemic conversation. Like you can't not talk about oral systemic when you're looking at the microscope. So it works beautifully. Those go hand in hand.
I was telling my husband about the podcast last night over dinner, that I was excited to talk to you about this, because I would love to have one. And we have so much in common that we could probably chit chat for a very, very long time. And he was like, what do you need a microscope for? And I'm like, well, you are a point in case, sir. Like you don't think that your plaque is just, you just think it's this amorphous material that's like living on your tooth. But if you take it, scrape it, put it on a little slide and blast it on a screen, you see what's living there. And you, mister, like, can't handle me when I'm scraping my tongue, will see how disgusting it is.
Yes.
So, like, yeah, that's the visual, the powerful visual. So, yeah. Oh, gosh.
Well, so and you know what's really cool, too? So working with patients in the microscope, this happened I mean, all the time. This happens frequently. You see someone with the high risk biofilm, they're working, they're doing all the things, you're going over it. And then you're like, hold on. Sometimes you're like, you know what? When is the last time your significant other, like I would go, they don't come here. I hope they're going somewhere and getting fantastic treatment, but they don't come here. When is the last time they've had their oral health addressed? They're like, oh, it's been a long time. And I was like, well, we know who patient zero is now. Like you're constantly getting reinfected, friend. So
Yeah.
you know that.
So you got to practice in Oklahoma at this wonderful collaborative practice, if we say integrative practice.
Yes.
Fell in love with the microscope. Is there a specific certification that you have with it, or it's just you got trained on it, like GBT, you get trained on it kind of a thing?
Trained on it.
Okay.
Yeah, just get trained on it.
So where did that lead you? Because you are now part of Dental Reveal. And is that your company? Tell us about this.
Yes. So I get like I just loved the microscope so much. Any hygienist that you know that works with a microscope, I asked them if they could ever go back to working without it, and they're like, no. Most of the people I know who use the microscope are more biological practices. And I just kind of was in my mind going, why doesn't everybody know about this? Why aren't we talking about this? This thing is awesome. And it doesn't have to be for just biological practices because I saw what it did to the schedule, how it just patients loved it and just accept treatment. Like I said, just like the oral camera. So I was going, man, everybody needs to know about this. Just we need to talk about this more. So on my own, I went ahead and this is when I was still in the States before I moved. I went ahead and got my LLC. And it was something that I wanted to do just to start training offices, kind of on those days that I wasn't doing clinical and just really sharing my love for it and spreading the word. And then kind of all these things kind of happened at the same time. And we were like, okay, yeah, we're moving abroad again. That, takes up a lot of time. But also my vision of it was, when we did it, again, my boss is amazing. She flew someone in to train us in the office, which that had its own expenses. And I know because she's huge on continuing education, the expense of sending your whole team to travel and all that. And I thought, there's got to be an easier way. So my whole goal really was to kind of do more online training. Also, when we got the scope, I feel like, or I just didn't know a lot about it. There was really just one microscope that I kind of heard of, which was amazing. But I was like, there should be other price points as well. Which is why I thought, okay, I want to find a dental practice or hygiene practice, and help them find the microscope that suits their needs individually. Because sometimes you don't want just one. If you have multiple hygiene rooms, in a perfect world, it'd be nice that each room was outfitted.
Yeah.
So maybe your budget is now divided by 2 because you want to, kind of deal. So I wanted to make it a little bit easier access, a little bit more customizable, and budget friendly.
Okay. Speaking of budget, that's the $1 million question. What does a microscope cost? I know there's going to be ranges, of course, but if somebody is like, I have a small budget, what would that be? And if somebody was like, outfit me, I don't even care, I want this education in every operatory, what would that look like cost wise?
Oh man, I should have checked the prices real quick before I jumped on. I feel like off the top of my head, I'm thinking you can get a microscope for $2,000, under $2,000.
No.
Right? So it's not, I feel like people really think it's a lot more than it is. So you can get some of some budget friendly ones for an outfitted, there are some that a little screen comes on the top even. So maybe you start there, and then as your practice grows, now I'm going to HDMI it up into this giant screen onto the wall, however you want to do it. So you can get in, you have to pay for training. So I get that that's another deal. And then they're all in between, right? Maybe there's another one for 4,000 something. I'm a rounder upper. So it's maybe $5,000, maybe $7,000. There's one that I really like that is so cool. I think it's about 10 grand or maybe just under. And it's honestly way more microscope than you need for our purposes. But it's kind of awesome because it has an iPad already on it that can detach. You can airdrop all these videos to patients, because I will tell you, patients end up liking it a lot and wanting to. Oh, I lost you. And wanting to. I'm trying to find out where you went. I'm so sorry. There you go. They want to see. They want a video to show their friends and family, and then you've got it for history. Hey, what did it look like last time? What does it look like now? Kind of deal. So there's some that can airdrop them, which are really fun. But again, it's more microscope than you need, but it's really cool if you're asking like pie in the sky.
So, this is so intriguing, and I'm loving everything you're saying. I'm curious, how much time out of your appointment does it actually take? I'm assuming it's pretty quick, but I've never done it. So, to acquire the sample of biofilm, place it on the slide, project it, have the whole conversation. How much time do you think that usually takes?
Surprisingly, not as much as you think, because I'm kind of a work and talk. So maybe less than 5 minutes, I know that sounds crazy because you can keep imparting all this information to them. In a perfect world, I like patients to ahead of time. I just tell them, do what you normally do. Don't do anything unusual, because we want to know what's actually living in your mouth, on, again, 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning or whatever. So don't brush right before you come in. Just do what you normally do. Let's see what's living in there. So they come in. You can go ahead and do vitals, x-rays, but don't do any pre-procedural rinses if you do something like that. But so really you get them in there, okay, and you're talking as you're doing the things, right? Okay, first thing I'm going to do is grab this little plaque sample. We're going to peek at it under the microscope, right? You lean them back. I like to have my slide on the tray, all the things we do to make things go really efficiently.
Yeah.
Get that sample, put it on there, slide goes on. You literally can go stick it under the microscope right then. You can also seal them if you want to.
What does that mean?
It's an acrylic that you put around the edge. So you smash it down, you put acrylic around the edge, and you just have to let that acrylic dry. It keeps the slide from drying out. It will let the slide, let things live in there a little bit longer. And certainly I do that sometimes, but most of the time, honestly, I just put it in there and then we go look at it immediately. I just take the sample, I set them right back up. Let's do the tour. We go through it and I talk about it. To be honest, to get back to the answer of how long does it take, when you first start, I think it is a little bit longer just because you're newer. Your patients are newer too. So you're really explaining a little bit more. Here's what I see. Here's what I see. And you do have to rein yourself in. Like I felt like I was like, wrap it up, Kristen. Like I've got other things to do here, right? Like I could talk for days. So it's kind of give them the tour. Then you get back in and you get to work. And then you're going to talk about all the things that are going to manipulate biofilm if you want to, right? Like what product, again, it goes back to, well, I really like to describe, this is biofilm, a really quick version of how a biofilm forms, the time frame, which is kind of gives them their why on why we need to physically remove things. This is why we told you to brush your teeth. This is why we said, floss, string floss, water floss, whatever, because you're breaking that up and you're forcing that whole biofilm, that process to start over, right? So step one, step two. So that kind of gives them their why. But I'm doing this while I'm working so that I'm still getting things done. I'm talking and working. Then you're talking about the removal process. You talk about, this is so weird. You go back to the Steffen's curve. Like I do feel like if we're talking about biofilm, patients need to know about pH and what that means. And I always tell them, what we're going to do, our goal is to set up a situation where beneficial bacteria thrive. Pathogenic bacteria do not. When we do this right, we don't have infection in the mouth. We don't have cavities, we don't have gum disease, and we're not infecting the rest of our body. So we talk about all these things that set up that situation. So food is one of them, right? Like I tell them, you can feed or starve whatever bacteria you want in your mouth. Feed the good guys, starve the bad guys. pH is huge. But again, I'm doing all of this education while I'm working, just trying to be mindful of that time, because it can take a lot of time if you're not careful.
I'm just fascinated. This is so cool for prevention. I'm always saying hygienists are like prevention specialists. So to be able to prevent things from progressing worse, or to help them even just understand the importance of maintaining that healthy status. Not everybody's going to have wild biofilm, and that's great. Like, wow, look how great you are. You're doing amazing. So I love that this can provide feedback for those really healthy patients too, that are doing all the right things. Sometimes we get in this zone where we just look for problems, like I tend to sometimes, I think I overcompensate, and now I good job, like way too often, because I'm like, no one's saying good job enough. Like, you're doing fantastic.
Yeah.
So I love celebrating healthy mouths. And
Mm-hmm.
that would be just like one more way to find that this person is doing so well, that they're really healthy. I'm curious, do you recommend that dental practices charge to have this microscope scan done?
This comes up a lot. At the end of the day, it's their decision, the practice's decision. And again, I haven't looked at it for a while, so you guys probably know better than me. The last time I checked, there wasn't a code for it for insurance purposes. So all the hygienists that I know that use it like they do the intraoral camera. They just use it to motivate and get people engaged to move forward with treatment. They don't charge. I did look up how much slides are. On Amazon last night, they're like 9 cents a slide.
Oh, wow.
So the cost is getting the microscope, getting the training. And as long as you don't break it, it's not like you're going to want new countertops and a new refrigerator before you probably want a new microscope. So it's going to last you forever. And then you're talking 9 cents a slide for a patient to put how much treatment, like it pays for itself. But if you guys happen to know of a code, please shoot it my way. I would love to share it with others.
I'm going to look into this. I'm curious if there is a code.
Yeah.
Right?
My practice, obviously we don't have a microscope, unfortunately, but I charge out for intraoral images. Like, we submit to insurance. I forget, like 2D dimensional something or other. I forget the code. I'm horrible with numbers, but
D0350?
yeah. That one, it's like $110, like, and every insurance is so different. So it's on every appointment, because I take photos at just about every appointment. So it probably would not be the same code, because you're not taking a picture, you're taking a sample.
You're taking a video. In theory, you could send them a screenshot. That's what these things do.
Oh.
I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, you could take a picture, you could take a video. Why
not?
We? Ooh, I feel like I really want to think a little bit more on that.
You're welcome.
And right,
like, the code.
Right, like, hey, that's interesting. Right. Well, and the other deal too, I don't want to say a lot. I happen to know of a lot of biological practices that are fee for service. So they're not signed up with any insurances anyhow. A lot of them will go ahead and file it for you or help you out, your own way, but they're not enrolled with anything. So there's not.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to not have to know too much about it in the last few years.
I'll send you my consultation fees. Just kidding. Just kidding. So what kind of a tool do you use to, like, collect the sample?
You can really use anything. My personal favorite is that EXD 1112 Explorer.
Oh.
Because I feel like it's light, it's gentle, it gets deep. Because again, you want to get to the base of the pocket, like the deepest, darkest dredges, if you can. So a probe is fine. I just felt like that, just enough of that curb would kind of like scoop it up like a little spoon and put it nicely on the slide, but you can do whatever. But I definitely tell people, try to get the deepest, darkest, or if you also see an area of inflammation, go there. There's something going on. And try not to get try to get it on your first swipe if you can, because you guys know how you start digging around in inflamed tissue, then you're going to get bleeding and you're going to mainly see red blood cells, which is also fun, but you really want to see bacteria. And you don't want, try to get it just soft material. You don't want calculus in there, because that slide cover isn't going to seat all the way down, and it won't look right. You'll see that you'll know what's going on. It needs to be just soft material that you can really squish.
So you probably don't want to probe beforehand, right? Just for the risk of bleeding?
Nope. I tell people, anything that's going to potentially mess up that biofilm, don't do it. So how do you know where to get a sample? You can either go with the last time's probe depths and what was the deepest last time. Okay, let's take one from there. You can go signs that you see that are really inflamed. If everything looks absolutely great, where in the world are you going to go? I always say get spots people miss, right? Like 18, distal lingual of 18, or around a partially erupted wisdom tooth, right? Something like that people miss.
I had some very heavy orange plaque earlier today on a patient, and it was just caked on the whole buccal surface on the whole left side of the mouth. And I'm thinking, how cool would that have been to see what that looked like under a microscope?
Yes, teeming with life. It's really fun too to have patients. So it's another cool thing when you're talking to them about their biofilm and all the things that you can do to tweak it. I would tell them, this goes for your kids as well. Again, family members tend to have these similar bacterial profiles, biofilm profiles. So what do your kids' biofilm look like? And when I'm starting to tell you this is why you brush, how many times, it's the same for kids, the same foods for kids, the same pH for kids. So this goes for everybody. And I feel like parents really help. They are very thankful for that information. And then they bring their kids in, and I test kids as well. Maybe not all of them all of the time like I do adults. That's a little bit faster, but for sure, if the parents have a high risk biofilm and you're like, wow, this kid, I don't know, that looks like there's some inflammation going on. You can get a straight up, very, very high risk, all the pathogens in this kid's mouth, except they don't present quite like they would an adult because of their immune system. It hasn't been there as long, all of those things. But you're like, no, you've got a full-on periodontal biofilm at the ripe old age of 8. So we have got to turn this around. This is going nowhere good fast.
So what would you do intervention-wise in a case like that? Like treat mom and dad, or would you do like something specific for the kiddo?
So when the kiddo's in on their appointment, and a lot of times it's with the parent, right? Because once they know you have a microscope, they also want to see what's my kid. It's just a great barometer for home care too. This is where it is a little bit different. It's kind of what's age appropriate. A 5-year-old may not understand like a 12-year-old kind of would, but when you show them what's living in there, and you do kind of have to go maybe back to a science class. I found homeschool kids really love it too. Like some of our patients even had a microscope at their house. I'm like, you could get a toothpick, like, just playing around. They just really get engaged, and that's the deal. It's meeting them where they are, but you're talking about the removal process. You're talking about what they eat. Like at the end of the day, I always tell them, you cannot brush your way out of bad nutrition. Like brush all you want. You've got to put some good things in there. And, like how often are you snacking? Again, we go back to that Stephen's curve. As nerdy as that sounds. So yeah, and it's coming from a place, I always make sure, again, with the whole we can change it, to not feel judged. It's not judging, but it's just, this is where we are. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we found it. Now we can change it. Like the good news is we found it, we can change it. So again, like, Joffrey, like you were saying, trying to be like positive about it. It's okay, we found it. Yay, it's there. We found it, but the good news is we can change it. So yay to finding it and not just going along and having disease be present.
I love your quote, you can't brush your way out of bad nutrition. I love that. I am going to use that from now on.
It took me a long time to learn that. But it's true. I mean, you guys have probably seen people that, and I feel like sometimes we're still kind of scratching our head. Why do you not have more disease in your mouth? Because what they tell you they're doing is kind of sounds really subpar, woefully inadequate. You're like, but you're kind of skating by. Like a lot of people that work a lot harder have a lot more problems. So what is it? Is it your nutrition? Is it the biofilm? What's living in there? Gut health? You're going to talk a lot. Another fun thing about, I love to do this to people when we're talking about the microscope. And it's great for oral systemic, but it's fun to have like a visual. When you give them that study that the oral microbiome and the gut microbiome overlap by 45%. So when you tell them you share 45% of the same bacteria, and then I go, how do we know this? And they're like, I was like, they tested saliva and poop. So your saliva and your poop share 45% of the same bacteria. They're like, ew. And you're like, yes. So, right. And then we talk about the ways that it moves. You swallow, a liter of saliva a day or something like that. I think it is almost. So yeah, it opens up so many conversations. And I always tell people in the funnest, nicest way, like, I may not know how many kids you have, their names. I don't know how many grandkids you have until we're probably going to be several appointments in. Like, I'm going to know you for a while before I know that, because for right now, it's going to be us and your health. So.
I like that actually a lot, because we're so often trying to build that rapport with them, and you're letting the patient know the rapport is coming, but this is what's most important today. And you're ensuring them, like, I will be here next time, you will be here next time. Those connections are going to happen. But so I love, that's beautifully put.
Oh, thank you. I just felt like it was nice to let them know we'll get there, just not, not for a minute.
And I think we always think that the most important thing for us as a provider is to build rapport, which it is. But when you are taking like their health very seriously and they see that, it's different than building the personal rapport. It's like, oh, this is because this is different, right? Like nobody else has tested their plaque before and like put it up on a screen for them to see. So yeah, this is a whole different level of attention grabbing for our patients.
And when you really want to get into it, like we said, we're going back to that time component in an appointment. If you're really talking about oral systemic health and all of the things, you kind of don't have time to talk about where you vacationed last summer. Like, I do want to know, because I love to travel. So really struggle. I do want to know those things, but I do have to, we have to do these other things first. Another fun thing too, that you can do, again, it's something that's going to take a little bit more time, but you can make it quick, and patients can even do this at home. They can test their own pH, their saliva pH. So when we want to know what's living in there and what is it, you can test it real quick. And again, you're telling them things are going to change. Every time you eat or drink something, it changes. But you could either test it in your office or tell them where to get strips and kind of tell them how to test it and what that means. And it just gives them some more fun insight of, this is what's going on in my body.
What a cool way to build a platform for this nutrition counseling.
Yeah.
And inexpensive.
Conversation, I'm thinking, wow, maybe my nutrition counseling needs to like step its game up, is what my thoughts are during this conversation here. And just what a cool platform for the nutrition conversation. I like that.
They all tie in beautifully, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because I don't know, what type of nutrition counseling are you doing? Because this has really been something that's been of interest to me for a while too.
Amanda, what does your nutrition counseling look like?
I was really hoping for you. I guess the guidelines that we're discussing here, like specific techniques, or hey, we live in Utah. So the big thing here is soda. Like so much soda, accompanied by a sweet treat. Like everybody is drinking insane amounts of soda here in Utah. It's baffling to me.
Interesting.
I could say nutrition counseling only is on my thought, like in the forefront, when I see like a desperate need for the conversation. Like, this person is high risk for caries. We need to have some nutrition counseling. I honestly don't do much nutrition counseling if somebody looks healthy, which I can improve on. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation because I'm lacking on my nutrition counseling.
I mean, I think it's so fascinating. I feel like that's why that's something else I've gotten into, as I've had more birthdays, more trips around the planet. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. And seeing what a profound effect it has. So, being from Oklahoma, obviously sodas are a thing there too. So, I mean, I've even heard stories of them being in kids' sippy cups, which is absolutely appalling. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. It was another hygiene friend that told me this. And she was like, no, it's true. So yeah, and when you start to talk about that, again, you're not only talking about feeding bad bacteria their favorite food, right? Sugar, you're also giving them their favorite environment in which they live, super acidic, which is a double whammy of awful. So, and I like to also, I feel like I slam on a lot of other things. It's not just that. There's some trickery going on. There's some sports drinks out there
Oh, 100%.
that I'm like, their marketing is masterful. Like, good on them. Like, they did it. And I was like, it's just as horrible. Like, please don't feed that to your children or your young athletes. Like, don't do that to them. There's other ways to get there.
Such better ways. I had so many thoughts. I feel like I forgot which one I was going to go with. But so I actually this year did a personal health. I worked with a nurse practitioner, and we were addressing, and it was a functional medicine practitioner. Did like pre-program blood work, identifying like what health concerns could be coming up down the road. Because I've got a lot of health issues in my family that I don't want if I can avoid it at all costs. And then we did a dietary elimination followed by a detox and then a reintroduction. And she actually had me do SIBO protocol. So SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Apparently I had a raging case of SIBO. Didn't know. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I had to go on that protocol. It was like for 60 days. And then working on just healing the gut. Like, the whole premise of this program was healing the gut and addressing systemic inflammation, and then seeing what your tests were like afterwards. And like, every one of my tests had significant improvement within 5 months just from addressing those very simple things. Through dietary. I mean, supplementation, but no medication. Just dietary changes, right? Simple, but really looking at ingredients, kind of what you're saying. Like, don't be fooled by what things are on labels, and really looking at just all the ingredients, and not just like, oh, whole foods and vegetables. Are these things being sprayed with toxins that are causing rips and tears in your colon, allowing those toxins to get into your body, causing leakage?
Right.
So anyway, that's a whole other tangent. So anyway, all that to say, there's so much. There's just so much that we're barely scratching the surface into nutrition in dental hygiene. And I would love to see more that we're able to do, not just dietary counseling, but I mean, we need so much time to sit down and talk to families of like, hey, this is what's going on. And if we don't like change course dramatically, you're going to be in here all the time with cavities, with gum disease, this, that, and the other. And it doesn't have to be like, cavities don't have to exist. They don't. It's not normal. It's common. It's not normal. And that's
Yes.
just like a concept that we don't have anymore, is like, what do you mean you don't have cavities? Or like, you don't have to get cavities. I don't know.
What a wonderful, don't you feel like what a gift to be able to give somebody, the gift of health, or just give them away, give them some keys to success on, you don't have to do this. I feel like they're so grateful and thankful. And yeah, where's this been all my life?
Yeah. And it's the ultimate prevention. Like Joffrey was saying, that's what hygienists are. We're prevention specialists.
Right? Yes. We're healers. Like I like to think of myself too. Like we can heal the oral micro. Like I feel
Yeah.
like you guys do, the mouth has been this other thing for so long. And especially I feel like I again have had so many years of clinical hygiene that it really was. I know we had some nutrition. I was trying to think about this the other day. I know we had some, and I do remember being pushed. Prevention was pushed, but I feel like you quickly get out, and then that is way in your rearview mirror. You're just really focused on, I got to get this clean. I got to get this clean. I got to get this clean.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I would love to see more nutrition expected from the patients as well. Like I love the idea of them expecting you're going to talk to me about this. Like what am I doing now?
Ah.
Like what would get really fun too. And I would imagine this goes on in gut health. I don't know. This would be a good question to ask. Since we know oral biofilms can change really quickly, I wonder if gut, I'm assuming, can as well. Like I would always tell patients, look, if you've got leaky gums, you probably have leaky gut. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
And then it got to where they would come in and tell me what their biofilm was going to look like. They would be like, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be amazing. Like I'm knocking it out of the park. Or, and this was always like after the holidays or after vacation, they would go, it's trash. It's totally going to be trash in there. I get it. I've been eating the eats, drinking the drinks. Like, I get it. And then and they were kind of right too. You're like, yeah, you're right. And then it would be like, you know what to do? And they're like, I do. And then that's when those appointments go really fast too, because they already know you've already talked about
it. That's not even just education. That's empowerment for patients.
Ooh,
that is ownership and empowerment. And that's what we want, right? Like we don't want our patients to come back and feel like they're going to go through this guilt trip of like, well, look at what's going on in there, like what we see, but we want them to see and take ownership, because that's true motivation when you can just get there and, they're on top of it. They're motivated. They want to see their results because they've been working for it, because they understand it's their health, not just, oh, she's going to yell at me again. I haven't been doing everything I should. That's not what I want. It's not the result I want.
Yeah. They're fully invested. That's the fun thing about the microscope. I mean, not 100%, right? But nothing's 100%. But yeah, for the most part, they're invested. They're like, oh yeah, yeah. I even had one person, and make sure I keep everything super anonymous, one patient that we were really struggling with a very high risk biofilm. And I was constantly like, man, what's up? And they said, I was like, I wanted him to use a sonic brush, a water flosser. We're going to play around with the pH, right? In my mind, it wasn't a whole lot, but this person certainly had a lot going on in their life. And they said, that just seems like a lot. I don't know that I could do this twice a day. And I was like, starting out twice a day, but then we can like play around with it, but let's get it healthy. And then this person was like, I really think it's a lot. And I was like, okay, do you want to try it? And then come back and we'll test your biofilm again, and you'll just see if it works. And then you'll at least know, and you can or you can't, because it's totally your opinion, but you will at least know in theory that it works. He was like, yeah. I was like, come back in 2 weeks. So they come back in 2 weeks, and it did look like way better. And I was like, I'm looking at your face, and your face is not happy. I was like, this is normally good news. And they said, I mean, it is, but I didn't really want to have to do all that. And I was like, well, you do you, but now we know. So moving forward, do whatever you want to do. I'm here to support you, but at least in the back of your mind, you're not guessing, is this all for naught?
Yeah. Not just a theory.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that fun stuff too. And the cool thing is, I mean, it's, as of today or last night, if it's 9 cents a slide, who cares?
Yeah, no, that's worth it. So, okay. So you are working not working in Thailand, but you're living in Thailand, and you're just kind of doing your business remotely, helping offices implement, I keep wanting to say lasers and I don't know why, microscopes into their practices, correct?
Yes.
So how does how does that work? Like, you're just like, hey, I'm just going to drop ship all this stuff to you and we're going to do a lunch and learn and you guys are going to rock it.
No, it's most of the time they see me on social media. Sometimes they'll go through my website, but they're just kind of curious about it a lot of times. And so it ends up being, hey, let's jump on a call so I can kind of know a little bit about your practice, how many hygienists, how many rooms, what are you really doing? And it's what is your budget? And then it's let's find a microscope that suits your needs. And then they can go buy it. You know, I'm like, here it is. I help source it for you. You buy it. It shows up in your office because, I mean, I wouldn't want it shipped here. That would be not, you know, ideal to go all the way here and there. So it's more of a, they just get it. I help them find the one that's going to suit their needs best. And then online training. So I'm just now finishing up the whole online course of a library of slides, talking them through. This is what this looks like. Explain it, you know, how to get a good sample, where to put it, all the things that you would do in person, just making videos of them. And it's an online course. That was the other deal that I really wanted an online course, because as you go to add a team member, because I'm assuming that you may need to do that, depends. But as you add a team member, it always ends up being 9 times out of 10, the hygienist that's going to train the new hygienist, the additional person. And, you know, that hygienist is also supposed to be making production and doing things, and you don't want to take time away from that. You're like, so who's going to train them? Who's going to get them up to speed? That's where the online course is really helpful. Then you kind of have it forever. You can use it for onboarding new team members. And honestly, I like for everybody, they don't have to know exactly how to do everything, but it's important that the front knows, why are we taking biofilm samples, right? So when patients call, they can help prep. It's just the whole team. Assistants need to know, everybody kind of needs to know what and why, so that we can really support the patients in that and support the practice in implementing it.
What an incredible idea, Kristen. I love this. I already want to put like a microscope on my like Christmas list for the office. I'm like, I need one now. I need one. I at least want to try it. See what
I've got
like.
ideas for you then. I've got some ideas for you.
Oh, we'll talk.
That is so cool. Kristen, I have learned so much having you on the podcast today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
It's so fun.
Yeah, this is what the podcast is all about, is getting people on, learning new information, sharing with it whoever's going to listen to this. And you just made my whole night. I learned so much today. So thank you.
Oh, I'm just glad I could be of help. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. We love closing our podcast with the same 2 ending questions for all of our guests. And I will ask the first one. So, Kristen, what piece of advice do you wish you could have learned in school that took you years to learn as a hygienist?
I mean, I feel like it's the microscope. You probably knew I was going to answer that.
Trick question.
Right? Like I I also listened to y'all's podcast, so I knew that was a question, and I was like, I know that. But I was like, yeah, it really is the microscope. So just, again, I feel like it doesn't have to be for biological offices. It's for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody that wants to grow a practice, everybody. So yeah, I wish I would have been doing this a million years ago.
Everybody's treating bacteria, right? So why not?
Exactly. Right? Like why aren't we?
Okay. Next question that cannot be answered by the microscope. What topic or concept do you wish you learned in school that took you years to learn in practice?
I feel like it might be a little bit more oral systemic link, biological dentistry. You know, the mouth is connected to the rest of the body, and I wish I would have known also that existed, because once you turn your brain into that realm, you heal. You see patients get better, and that everybody's happy when you when you see that patients are happy, you're happy. I mean, we're there, again, back to we're there to help people heal. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel like we're doing a good job. Like, yay, it's a win for you is a win for me. So that's probably something I wish I would have also known.
Yeah. And such
Back in the day.
motivation to stay in the op.
Yeah.
We just did a podcast, but burnout is just such a thing. And I think all this new technology that we have at our disposal now, like it has to, I mean, it keeps me motivated and excited to be in clinic. Like, man, I would love to have GPT in my op. Man, I would love to have a microscope in my op. I am excited to have AI now. I was a little nervous at first, but I love it now. So just all of the latest stuff is just so exciting.
Yeah. I feel like that technology will kind of breathe a fresh breath of air into maybe like a stale old
Practice.
situation. If you're feeling stagnant, like, yeah, go learn some new stuff and
Yeah.
implement it. Don't just go to the course, come back, implement it, share it with your patients, and then step back and see what happens.
Yeah.
Awesome. Kristen, thank you. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you for having me.